Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku and Bakugo were reborn with their memories. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The Void and the Vanquished. The world did not end with a bang, nor a whimper. It ended in a cacophony of white noise and the smell of ozone, blood, and decaying asphalt. Izuku Midoriya floated in a space that was neither hot nor cold. It was the crushing weight of nothingness. The last thing he remembered was the sensation of his own arms shattering, not from One for All's backlash, but from the sheer exhaustion of holding the sky up. He remembered the face of Tamura Shigaraki, not the villain, but the crying child buried beneath the hands, dissolving into light. He remembered the agonizing tearing of his transfer, the vestige of the first user nodding a final, sorrowful farewell. And he remembered Katsuki. He remembered the sight of his childhood friend, his tormentor, his rival, his brother-in-arms, collapsing. He remembered the sickening silence of a heart that had been sewn back together by Edshot's sacrifice finally giving out, unable to sustain the rhythm of war any longer. We lost? Izuku thought, his consciousness fraying like old rope. Or did we win? It didn't matter. The silence was absolute. The pain, the bone-deep ache of broken ribs, the phantom itch of danger sense, the throbbing of his scarred arms, was fading. It was a mercy. He was 19 years old, and he felt ancient. He was ready to sleep. Don't you dare die on me, nerd. The voice didn't come from the void. It came from inside his own soul, a tether refusing to snap. Kaken, get up. We aren't done. I'm not done winning. The white void began to spin. It twisted, contorting into colors that were too bright, too saturated. The silence was shattered not by the roar of All for One, but by the high-pitched, piercing shrieking of cicadas. Gravity returned with a vengeance. It slammed into him, but it wasn't the crushing gravity of a singularity. It was the simple, undeniable pull of the earth. Izuku gasped, a desperate, wet intake of air that filled lungs which felt too small, too tight. His eyes snapped open. The phantom explosion. Katsuki Bakugo knew the exact moment he died. He felt the rhythm of his heart. The one-edged shot had sacrificed himself to restart, stumble. It was a misbeat, then a flutter, then a long, hollow pause. He had thrown his final howitzer impact, a blast so bright it bleached the shadows of the ruins around them. He had seen the fear in All for One's eyes, and then darkness. He expected hell. He was ready for it. He'd fight the devil for the throne if he had to. Instead, he felt the sun. It was hot, beating down on the back of his neck. Not the scorching heat of his nitroglycerin sweat igniting, but the lazy, oppressive heat of a Japanese summer afternoon. Katsuki blinked. His vision was blurry, swimming with tears he didn't remember shedding. He tried to wipe them away, but his hand. He froze. He was staring at his hand. It was unscarred. The calluses from years of gauntlet friction, the burn marks from overuse, the jagged line where Shigaraki had pierced him, gone. His skin was smooth. Soft. Pudgy. What the hell? His instincts, honed by years of urban warfare and villain suppression, screamed at him to assess the threat. He looked up. He wasn't in the ruins of Jaka City. He wasn't in the floating coffin of Yue. He was in a park. A shitty, small neighborhood park with a sandbox, a jungle gym that looked like a death trap, and a grotesque amount of greenery. And standing in front of him, trembling like a leaf in a hurricane, was Izuku Midoriya. But it wasn't the Izuku he had just died beside. This wasn't the battered, scarred, blood-soaked hero with lightning crackling around him. This was a child. A tiny, green-haired embrace of tears and snot, wearing a yellow t-shirt that looked 2 sizes too big. Katsuki felt a jolt of electricity run through his palms. It was a reflex. An old, ugly reflex buried deep in his muscle memory. So, a voice said behind him. A child's voice. He really is quirkless. Even after all that talk, Katsuki spun around. 2 extras. The one with the wings and the one with the extending fingers. They looked like toddlers. They were toddlers. Katsuki, the winged kid, Tsubasa, his brain supplied, sneered. Teach him a lesson. He thinks he can be a hero without a quirk. Katsuki's mind reeled. The sensory input was overwhelming. The smell of pine, the grit of dirt under his shoes, Velcro shoes, not combat boots, and the sickeningly high pitch of his own breathing. Memory overlay. This was the day. The day at the river? No, the park. The day the rift between them became a canyon. The day he cemented his path as a bully. His body moved on autopilot. It was terrifying. It was like being a passenger in a vehicle driven by a 4-year-old sociopath. He stepped forward. His palms sparked. Pop pop, small explosions. Pathetic. Like firecrackers, he saw Izuku flinch. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the burn. Katsuki felt a phantom sensation rip through his chest. It wasn't hatred. It was the memory of a spike piercing his heart. It was the memory of Izuku screaming his name as his life faded. It was the crushing guilt that had defined his entire teenage adolescence, the guilt he had died trying to atone for. Stop! Katsuki screamed internally. His body stumbled. The explosions in his palms died out, leaving only wisps of smoke. He clutched his chest, gasping. The pain was psychosomatic, but it brought him to his knees. Katsuki? Tsubasa asked, confusion coloring his tone. What's wrong? Katsuki ignored him. He stared at the ground. His shadow was small. Round. He looked up. Izuku had opened his eyes. Those eyes. They were large, watery, and green, framed by the roundness of early childhood. But the look within them was wrong. It wasn't the confused fear of a 4-year-old who didn't understand why his best friend had turned on him. It was the shattered, 1,000-yard stare of a soldier who had seen the apocalypse. Izuku wasn't looking at Katsuki's hands. He was looking at Katsuki's eyes. And in that moment, the playground melted away. The years of bullying, the entrance exams, the dorms, the war, it all passed between them in a single, silent frequency. 3. The soldier in the sandbox. Izuku couldn't breathe. He was small. He felt light. The crushing weight of one for all, the sensation of 7 other souls living beneath his skin, was gone. He felt hollowed out. He was on the ground. The dirt scraped his knees. He knew this scene. He had relived it in his nightmares 1,000 times. This was the moment Kaken turned on him. This was the origin story of his insecurity. He saw the sparks. He saw the sneer. But then, the sneer vanished. Kaken stumbled. He clutched his chest, his face twisting not in anger, but in agony. Izuku's hero instincts, overriding his confusion, flared to life. Assessment, ally down. Potential cardiac event? Quirk malfunction? He tried to activate full cowling to rush to Katsuki's side. He reached for the power stockpile. Nothing. It was like reaching for a phantom limb. The switch was gone. The well was dry. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his gut. I'm powerless. I can't move. But he could. He scrambled backward, not out of fear of the explosion, but out of disorientation. He looked at Kaken. Kaken was staring at him. And for the first time in this timeline, or the last, Izuku saw pure, unadulterated horror on Katsuki Bakugo's face. Deku? The nickname was there, but the venom was missing. It was breathless. A question. Izuku swallowed. His throat felt tight. His voice, when it came out, was a squeak. Kaken? They stared at each other. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, ignored by the screaming cicadas. Katsuki, what are you doing? The finger quirk kid asked, stepping closer. Just blast him. Katsuki's head snapped toward the extra. The movement was too fast, too precise for a toddler. His eyes narrowed, and for a split second, the aura of the great explosion murder god dynamite flickered around the small boy. Shut up, Katsuki growled. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a command. Low. Dangerous. The 2 lackeys froze. They had never heard Katsuki sound like that. They had heard him yell, scream, and brag. They had never heard him sound cold. Katsuki turned back to Izuku. He took a breath, his chest heaving. He extended a hand, not to blast. To help. Izuku stared at the open palm. It was small, unblemished, smelling of burned sugar. In his memories, this hand had pushed him into rivers, burned his notebooks, and shoved him away. But in his recent memories, this hand had pulled him out of the darkness of the vigilante arc. This hand had held him up when he couldn't stand. Izuku reached out. His trembling fingers grasped Katsuki's. The grip was firm. Grounding. Katsuki pulled him up with a strength that shouldn't have been possible for a 4-year-old, purely because he knew exactly how to use his center of gravity. "We need to talk," Katsuki muttered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Now," Izuku nodded, tears finally spilling over. Not tears of fear. Tears of relief. "Yeah. We do." Katsuki turned to the other kids. "I'm going home. Don't follow us." "But," Tsubasa started. "I said," Katsuki turned, his red eyes flashing with a terrifying intensity. "Don't follow us." The intimidation check was successful. The other children recoiled, instinctively sensing a predator. Katsuki grabbed Izuku's wrist, gentle, careful not to burn, and dragged him toward the far side of the park, where a concrete tunnel sat half buried in the sand, hidden by overgrown bushes. For the War Council of Kindergarten, the tunnel was cool and smelled of damp earth and urine. It was the perfect bunker. They sat opposite each other, cross-legged in the sand. For a long minute neither spoke. They just breathed, verifying that the air was real, that their lungs were working. Izuku looked at his hands again. He clenched and unclenched them. "I don't have it," he whispered. "It's gone. One for all, the vestiges, they're gone." Katsuki watched him, his expression unreadable. "What's the last thing you remember?" "The wind," Izuku said, his voice trembling. Shigaraki's face crumbling. "The first user saying goodbye. And you. I saw you go down, Kaken." "Your heart." Katsuki rubbed his chest absent-mindedly. "Yeah. Hurt like a bitch. Then I woke up standing over you." "I died," Izuku said simply. "I know I did. My body gave out." "Same," Katsuki grunted. He picked up a handful of sand and let it sift through his fingers. "So. We're dead. This is hell? Purgatory? It feels too real for that," Izuku muttered, slipping instantly into his analysis mode. He began to rock back and forth slightly. Sensory input is consistent. Pain receptors are active. If this were a hallucination or a dying dream, the consistency of the timeline wouldn't hold. The butterfly effect hasn't kicked in yet because we just woke up. This is time travel. Chronological regression retaining consciousness. Katsuki let out a short, sharp laugh. It sounded jarring coming from a child. "You're still a mutterstorm. At least some things haven't changed." "Kaken, this is serious." Izuku looked up, panic rising. I'm quirkless. Actually quirkless this time. All Might still has one for all. All for One is still out there, hiding. The League hasn't formed. The war, everyone who died, is alive, Katsuki finished. The realization hit them both like a physical blow. Midnight. Sir Night Eye. Crust. Majestic. Snatch. Even the villains like twice. "Mom," Izuku whispered. She's not gonna be worrying about me dying every day." "The old hag," Katsuki murmured. "She won't be looking at me like I'm a ticking time bomb." Silence descended again, but this time it was heavy with possibility. "We have a chance," Izuku said, his eyes widening. The despair was replaced by a spark. The spark that All Might had seen. "Kaken, we know everything. We know where the nomas are made. We know about the doctor in the hospital. We know about the traitor, Aoyama." Katsuki spat the name, then sighed. "Poor bastard. We can fix that too, but I'm useless." Izuku slammed his small fists into the sand. "I can't fight. I don't have Ofe. Without it, I can't protect anyone. I can't even receive it for another 10 years because my body will explode." Katsuki leaned forward and flicked Izuku on the forehead. "Oh, stop spiraling, idiot," Katsuki scowled. "You're not useless. You have the brain of a tactical genius who led the final war effort. You memorized every hero and villain quirk in existence. And you have me." Izuku rubbed his forehead. "You," Katsuki held up his hand. A small explosion popped. "I have my quirk. It's weak right now, My sweat glands aren't developed, but the technique? That's all mental. AP shot, stun grenade, howitzer, I know how to do them. I just need to train this body to handle the recoil. He looked Izuku in the eye. I'm not making the same mistakes, Izuku. I'm not wasting 10 years being a colossal prick to you. We aren't rivals right now. We're a unit. Izuku stared at him. The tears started again. Kaken, don't start crying, damn it. Katsuki looked away, ears turning red. Listen. Here's the situation. We are 4 years old. We have roughly 11 years before the UA entrance exam. That is 11 years of prep time. All Might, Izuku said. We need to get to All Might. No, Katsuki cut him off. Not yet. Think about it. If 2 toddlers walk up to the number 1 hero and say, hey, we know about One for All and the Demon Lord in the basement, he'll hand us over to Tsukachi, and we'll be put in a psych ward. Or worse, the doctor finds out. Izuku nodded slowly, wiping his face. You're right. Information control is vital. If All for One finds out we know the future, he'll kill us before we can even lift a dumbbell. We train, Katsuki declared. We train like hell. You need to get this noodle body ready so that when you do meet All Might, you don't have to spend 10 months cleaning a beach just to keep your limbs attached. And I can analyze, Izuku added, his mind racing. I can write down everything. Dates, locations, weakness. We can predict the Sludge villain. We can stop the USJ attack. We can save Oboro Shirakumo, Katsuki said softly. Izuku froze. Kurogyri. Yeah. If we play this right, Aizawa doesn't have to lose his mind. They sat in the tunnel as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. 2 toddlers, plotting the salvation of the world. One thing, Izuku said, his voice serious. The bullying. Katsuki flinched. I told you I'm not. No, Izuku shook his head. I mean, we can't change too much too fast. People will notice. Your mom, my mom, the teachers. If we suddenly become perfect soldiers, it raises flags. We have to be kids, Katsuki groaned, throwing his head back. I have to pretend to care about finger painting? And I have to pretend to be scared of everything, Izuku smiled weakly. But we don't have to be enemies. We can be rivals in a way that looks like bickering to them, but is training to us. Katsuki looked at Izuku. He saw the scarred veteran beneath the soft skin. He saw the hero who had saved him 1,000 times. Deal, Katsuki said. He held out his fist. Izuku looked at it. The last time they had bumped fists was moments before the final battle. He raised his own small hand and bumped it against Katsuki's. Echoes, Katsuki muttered. What? We're echoes. Of a future that doesn't exist anymore. Katsuki stood up, brushing the sand off his shorts. Come on. The hags will be worried. The home front. Walking home was a surreal experience. The streets of Muzidafu were peaceful. There were no debris piles, no evacuee camps, no patrolling pro-heroes looking for Tartarus escapees. It was just a Tuesday. They walked side by side. Usually, Katsuki would be 10 paces ahead, and Izuku would be trailing behind. Now they marched in step, their strides coordinated perfectly despite the difference in leg length. When they reached the intersection where their paths split, they stopped. Tomorrow, Katsuki said. Playground. 0600 hours. Kaken, we have kindergarten at 0900, Izuku pointed out. Exactly. 3 hours of PT before the extras show up. I'm going to teach you how to throw a punch that doesn't break your thumb. I know how to punch. You know how to punch with super strength. Without it, your form is sloppy. We're fixing it. Okay, Izuku agreed. 0600. They hesitated. Neither wanted to let the other out of their sight. Separation anxiety was already clawing at their chests. I'm not dying tonight, Izuku, Katsuki said, reading his mind. I'm just going to dinner. I know. Me neither. With a final nod, they parted ways. Izuku walked up the stairs to his apartment. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He reached the door. The nameplate read Midoriya. He unlocked it. He remembered where the spare key was hidden under the planter, and stepped inside. Izuku? Is that you? The voice stopped him dead in the hallway. Inko Midoriya stepped out of the kitchen. She was younger. Slimmer. Her face wasn't lined with the constant, crushing worry that had aged her 20 years in his timeline. She was smiling, wiping her hands on an apron. You're late, sweetie. Did you have fun with Katsuki? Izuku looked at her. He saw the woman who had apologized for his lack of a quirk. The woman who had made him a costume. The woman who had cried when he left UA to become a vigilante because he couldn't bear to see her targeted. She was safe. She was happy. Mom, he choked out. Inko's smile faltered. Izuku? What's wrong? Did you get hurt? He ran. He didn't use full cowling, but he moved with a desperation that startled her. He slammed into her legs, wrapping his small arms around her waist, burying his face in her apron. He wailed. It was the cry of a 4-year-old, but the grief was that of a man who had thought he would never see his mother again. I love you, he sobbed. I love you so much. Inko knelt down immediately, wrapping her arms around him, pulling him close. Oh, my baby! I love you too. What happened? Was it the other kids? No, Izuku cried, clutching her shirt. I missed you. Inko laughed through her own instant tears, the Midoriya family trait. Missed me? You saw me this morning. Not for 5 years, Izuku thought. Not really. He held on to her, smelling the laundry detergent and dinner cooking. He let himself be a child for a moment. He let her comfort him. But even as he cried, his mind was working. He would protect this. He would protect her smile. He would tear apart the League of Villains with his bare hands if he had to, just to keep this kitchen safe. 6. The explosive household. Across the neighborhood, Katsuki Bakugo opened the door to his house. Katsuki. Where have you been? The volume was comforting. Mitsuki Bakugo stormed into the hallway, looking fierce and indistinguishable from the woman Katsuki remembered, just with fewer gray hairs. I was at the park, old hag. Katsuki yelled back. The words felt right. The banter was their love language. Mitsuki halted, blinking. Usually, Katsuki would just ignore her or grunt. Don't call me hag. You're 4. Wash your hands, dinner is ready. Katsuki walked into the kitchen. His father, Masaru, was sitting at the table reading a newspaper. A newspaper that didn't have headlines about the collapse of society. Hey, champ, Masaru smiled gently. Katsuki looked at his dad. Soft-spoken, anxious Masaru. The man Katsuki had secretly worried about every day of the war. Katsuki went to the sink. He dragged the step stool over. Damn, being short was annoying, and turned on the tap. He washed his hands, watching the water swirl down the drain. He looked at his reflection in the window. Red eyes. Spiky blonde hair. A soft, childish face. He flexed his hand. A tiny spark popped. He thought about Izuku. He thought about the look in the nerd's eyes. The fear, the determination. Katsuki turned off the tap. He walked to the table and climbed into his chair. Mom, Katsuki said. Mitsuki paused while plating the curry. Yeah? I need more protein. Mitsuki raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? And I need weights. Small ones? And books. Books on biology and martial arts. Masaru lowered his newspaper. Katsuki? Are you okay? Katsuki picked up his spoon. He looked at his parents with a seriousness that unnerved them. I'm going to be the #1 hero, he stated. It wasn't a brag. It was a statement of fact. But to do that, I have to be stronger than All Might. Starting now, Mitsuki smirked, ruffling his hair roughly. That's the spirit, brat. Eat your carrots first. Katsuki ate his carrots. He hated them, but he ate them. Nutrition was vital. Later that night, lying in his All Might-themed bed, Katsuki stared at the ceiling. He held his hand up, tracing the lines of his palm in the dark. I won't be the reason he fails this time, Katsuki vowed to the darkness. I won't be the villain in his story. I'll be his shield. And his spear. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time he drifted off, he saw the flash of white light. He saw the decay. He rolled over and grabbed the All Might action figure from his nightstand. He gripped it tight, grounding himself. 0600, he thought. Training starts at 0600. 7. The first step. The next morning, The sun rose over Muzurifu, bathing the peaceful city in golden light. At the Aldera Municipal Park, two small figures stood by the pull-up bars. One was doing crunches in the sand, his form impeccable despite his lack of muscle tone. The other was hanging from the bar, testing his grip strength. 50, Izuku panted, sitting up. Weak, Katsuki grunted, dropping from the bar. Do 50 more. I'm going to throw up. Good. That means you're working. Don't get it on my shoes. Izuku wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked at Katsuki. We need a code name. For the mission. Mission? Saving the world. Changing the timeline. Katsuki smirked. He ignited a small spark in his palm. It was brighter today. Operation Plus Ultra, Katsuki said. Izuku smiled. It was the smile of the symbol of hope, shining through the face of a child. Operation Plus Ultra, Izuku agreed. Let's go be heroes. They turned back to their training, two ghosts from a broken future, forging a path toward a dawn that only they could see. The cicadas sang, unaware that the fate of the world had just shifted in a sandbox. The purgatory of crayons, age 5. Time, Izuku Midoriya discovered, was a cruel mistress. In the heat of battle, time dilated. A second could stretch into an eternity, as danger sense flared and muscles coiled. But in the body of a 5-year-old sitting in a kindergarten classroom, time was a viscous sludge that refused to move. The teacher, a kind woman with a minor telekinetic quirk used mostly for floating chalk, was explaining basic addition. Again. If All Might saves 2 people on Monday, she chirped, pinning a crude drawing of the hero to the board, and 3 people on Tuesday, how many people did he save? 5, the class chorused. Izuku sat in the back, his chin resting on his palm. His other hand was busy sketching a diagram of the skeletal structure of a high-end Nomu on the back of his coloring sheet. He was trying to recall the exact tensile strength of the carbon fibers the doctor had used to reinforce their joints. Beside him, Katsuki Bakugo was vibrating. Not from excitement, but from the sheer, unadulterated rage of boredom. He was aggressively molding a lump of gray clay. To the untrained eye, it looked like a blob. To Izuku, it was clearly a scale model of a clustered grenade. I'm going to lose it, Katsuki whispered, the sound barely traveling across the small gap between their desks. If she asks us to count apples one more time, I'm going to blow up the chalkboard. Information retention is important for civilian development, Kaken, Izuku murmured back, not looking up from his Nomu anatomy. Besides, your fine motor control needs work. That grenade pin is too thick. Katsuki crushed the clay flat. Shut up, nerd. I'm working with Play-Doh. It lacks structural integrity. The dynamic of the classroom had shifted tectonically since the wake-up call a year prior. In the original timeline, this was the era where Katsuki's ego bloated like a tick, fed by the praise of teachers and peers, while Izuku shrank into the shadows of quirklessness. Now, they were the demon duo of the sunflower room. They didn't bully anyone. In fact, they terrified the other children with their silence. They didn't run around screaming during recess. They ran timed laps around the perimeter of the playground, checking their pulses. They didn't play house. They sat in the sandbox drawing maps of UA. High and debating breach points. Izuku, Katsuki, the teacher called out, her voice straining with forced cheerfulness. Would you like to share with the class what you're working on? The room went quiet. Tsubasa, the winged boy who would one day become a Nomu, a fact that haunted both time travelers, snickered. Probably drawing zeros for the zero quirk loser. Katsuki stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. He didn't yell. He didn't spark. He just looked at Tsubasa with the dead, shark-like eyes of a veteran who had interrogated villains in dark alleys. He's calculating the structural weaknesses of villains you'll never be strong enough to fight, Katsuki said, his voice flat. And I'm sculpting a shape charge. Do you want a demonstration on blast radius, Tsubasa? The teacher paled. Katsuki. We use kind words. Those were factual words, Katsuki muttered, sitting back down. Izuku sighed, sliding his drawing under a book. We agreed to keep a low profile, Kaken. They're loud, Katsuki grunted. And slow. It's been a year, Izuku. A whole year of this. 9 more to go until UA, Izuku reminded him. Katsuki put his head on the desk with a thud. Wake me up when we're 12. 2. The dojo and the ghost age 8. The physical limitations were the hardest part. Izuku knew how to perform a Delaware smash. He knew the torque required for a St. Louis smash. He knew how to pivot his hips to execute a flawless roundhouse kick. But knowing and doing were two different things when your legs were short and your bones were still soft. Without one for all coursing through his veins, Izuku felt heavy. He felt slow. But he refused to be weak. Again, the sensei barked. Izuku stood in the center of the mat at the local dojo. He was sweating, his GI clinging to his small frame. Opposite him was a boy 2 years older and a head taller, with a quirk that turned his skin into bark. The boy lunged. A haymaker, sloppy and telegraphed. In his old life, pre-OFA Izuku would have flinched. He would have closed his eyes and taken the hit. This Izuku didn't blink. He saw the shift in the boy's weight. He saw the opening in the guard. He stepped inside the boy's reach, grabbed the extended arm, used the boy's own momentum, and swept his leg. The older boy hit the mat with a winded whump. Point Midoriya, the sensei called out, looking impressed but slightly disturbed. Midoriya, your technique is advanced. Where did you learn that judo throw? Internet, Izuku lied smoothly, bowing to his opponent. It was actually a move he'd picked up from Ojiro during a sparring session in their second year at UA. From the sidelines, Katsuki watched, his arms crossed. He wasn't participating in this class. The dojo wouldn't let him use his quirk, and he refused to spar without integrating his explosions. He was just here as moral support, which mostly meant glaring at anyone who looked at Izuku the wrong way. After class, they walked to the convenience store to buy pork buns. The winter air was crisp, biting at their cheeks. You're holding back, Katsuki accused, biting into his bun. I have to, Izuku said, adjusting his backpack. If I used the capture scarf maneuvers Aizawa-sensei taught me, I'd break that kid's arm. I don't have the scarf, so I have to improvise with grappling. You need to build mass, Katsuki critiqued, poking Izuku's shoulder. You're all bone. When you get Ofe back, you'll explode if you don't bulk up faster. I can't bulk up too fast, Kaken, I'm 8. It stunts growth plates. Izuku sighed, looking at his hand. It's frustrating. I know the optimal path to victory, but I can't execute it. Welcome to my world, Katsuki grumbled. My sweat glands are still developing. If I try a howitzer impact now, I'll dehydrate in 3 seconds and pass out. I'm capped at basic AP shots. They turned a corner and stopped. Across the street, a villain, a purse snatcher with a minor speed quirk, was running from a police officer. Instinct flared. Both boys tensed. Izuku's foot shifted back, ready to launch. Katsuki's palms smoked, but they didn't move. They watched as the villain outran the cop and disappeared down an alley. We could have stopped him, Izuku whispered. A predictable path. Tripwire or a suppressive blast. And then what? Katsuki asked, his voice tight. We're 8. We get arrested for vigilantism. It goes on our permanent record. Yui rejects us. The future is doomed. Izuku clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. It sucks. Yeah, Katsuki agreed, staring at the empty alley. It sucks. But we're playing the long game. We're not fighting purse snatchers. We're fighting gods. They walked home in silence, the burden of their inaction weighing heavier than any failure they had experienced in the future. This was the discipline of the soldier, standing down when every fiber of your being screamed to engage. 3. The notebooks, age 10. The hero analysis for the future notebooks had returned, but they were no longer the ramblings of a fandom. They were dossiers. Notebook 13 lay open on Izuku's desk. The pages were filled with coded cipher, a mix of English, Japanese, and a shorthand code they had developed during the war. Subject Stain, the hero killer. Quirk, Bloodcurdle. Location vectors. Hose's city. Weakness. Type O blood creates shortest paralysis duration. Engagement strategy. Long-range bombardment Bakugo. Mobility overload, Midoriya. Do not engage in close quarters without armor plating on extremities. Status, active. Accumulating kills. You're obsessing over Stain again, Katsuki said, lounging on Izuku's bed. He was tossing a tennis ball at the ceiling and catching it. Thwack. Thwack. He's the catalyst, Izuku muttered, chewing on the end of his pen. If we neutralize him early, the League struggles to recruit. Toga and Dabi only joined because of Stain's ideology. Without him, the Vanguard Action Squad is half as strong. But if we neutralize him too early, Katsuki countered, the League might recruit different, unknown variables. Better the devil we know. We can't let him cripple Ida's brother, Izuku said firmly. Agreed. Tensei survives. That's non-negotiable. Katsuki sat up. What about the Shai Hasaikai? Overhaul? Izuku flipped a few pages. A drawing of Kai Chisaki stared back at them. Eri, Izuku whispered. The name was a prayer and a curse. We have to get her out sooner. I can't let her stay there for years. We need a raid, Katsuki said. A real one. Not two middle schoolers sneaking in. We need Night Eye. I've been sending anonymous tips, Izuku revealed. Using public library computers, routed through 3 proxies. Sending data on trigger distribution routes to Night Eye's agency. Trying to speed up his investigation. Katsuki raised an eyebrow. You're hacking? I'm applying knowledge I learned from Meihatsum, Izuku smiled sheepishly. She talked a lot while she was fixing my gloves, Katsuki snorted. You're a terrifying nerd. What about All for One? The room went silent. We don't know where he is, Izuku admitted quietly. Not until Kamino. And if we try to find him now, he'll kill us. He has search quirks, lie detection. If he catches even a whiff of us knowing about the One for All lineage. We wait for All Might, Katsuki concluded. We stick to the script until the Sludge villain incident. That's our entry point. For more years, Izuku sighed. For more years, Katsuki echoed. The door opened, and Inko Midoriya peeked in with a tray of cut fruit. She paused, looking at the 2 10-year-olds surrounded by stacks of books on criminal psychology, quirk theory, and fluid dynamics. Snack time, she chirped, though her eyes held a lingering worry. You boys are working so hard. Are you sure you don't want to play video games? I bought that new hero game. Waste of time, Katsuki said, accepting a slice of apple. Thanks, Auntie. We're studying for the mock exams, Izuku lied. He closed the notebook on Stain. Thanks, Mom. Inko lingered at the door. You two are so grown up. It's wonderful, but sometimes I wish you'd just be messy. Make mistakes. Izuku and Katsuki exchanged a look. They had made enough mistakes to fill a graveyard. They weren't keen on making any more. We're okay, Mom, Izuku said gently. We just have big dreams. I know, Inko smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. I just hope those dreams don't take you away from me too soon. As she closed the door, the weight of her words hung in the air. Izuku looked at his hands that were currently unscarred, but destined to break. She knows something is off, Izuku whispered. Of course she does, Katsuki said, biting into the apple with a crunch. Moms always know. But she doesn't know what. As long as we're safe, she'll handle it. Focus on the mission, Deku. 4. The Lords of Aldera, age 13. By the time they reached their second year of middle school, the legend of Midoriya and Bakugo was solidified. Aldera Junior High was a typical school, mediocre, obsessed with high placement rates, and breeding ground for petty cruelty. In the original timeline, it was hell for Izuku. In this timeline, it was their kingdom. They didn't rule through fear, exactly. They ruled through competence. Katsuki was the top student. His grades were perfect. His athletic scores shattered district records. He was abrasive, loud, and didn't suffer fools, but he didn't initiate violence. He walked through the halls with the swagger of a general, and people parted like the Red Sea. Izuku was the anomaly. He was the quirkless genius. He sat at the top of the academic rankings right next to Katsuki. He didn't stutter. He didn't hunch. He walked with his back straight, eyes constantly scanning the perimeter. The teachers didn't know how to handle him. They couldn't pity him because he aced every test. They couldn't mock him because Bakugo would verbally eviscerate anyone who tried. It was lunchtime. The cafeteria was noisy. 3 third-year students cornered a first-year near the vending machines. One of the bullies had elongated fingers, the same extra from kindergarten, still trying to be tough. Give me your yen, the bully sneered. Izuku and Katsuki were walking by. They didn't even break stride. Vector, stop it, Izuku said calmly. He didn't shout. He just stated it. The bully turned. Stay out of it, quirkless. Or do you want a beating? Katsuki stopped. He slowly peeled the lid off his yogurt. Did you just threaten him? Yeah, Bakugo. What are you gonna do? He's useless, Izuku sighed, adjusting his backpack straps. Quirk Law, Section 12, Paragraph 3, unauthorized use of quirks for intimidation within school grounds constitutes grounds for immediate suspension. Furthermore, your posture indicates you rely on your right side. Your left knee is weak from that soccer injury last month. If you swing, you'll overextend. The bully blinked. What? He's saying, Katsuki stepped forward, his red eyes glowing, that if you touch him, or the kid, I will take that weak knee and turn it into dust. And I won't even use my quirk to do it. The bully looked between them. The quirkless boy who analyzed him like a lab rat, and the explosion boy who looked like he was deciding where to hide a body. Whatever, the bully muttered, shoving his hands in his pockets and walking away. The first-year student looked up at them with wide, worshipping eyes. Thank you? You guys are amazing. Don't thank us, Katsuki snapped. Get stronger. Don't let extras push you around, and report the incident to the guidance counselor, Izuku added helpfully. Paper trails are important. They walked away, leaving the confused student behind. That felt good, Izuku admitted. Small fry, Katsuki scoffed. But it keeps the skills sharp. Intimidation is 90% of the battle. They went to the roof, their sanctuary. It was fenced off, but they had picked the lock on the first day of school. They sat against the chain-link fence, looking out over the city. 1 year left, Izuku said. The wind ruffled his unruly green hair. The sludge villain attacks in 10 months. Your body ready? Katsuki asked. Izuku flexed his arm. Under the school uniform, his muscles were dense, corded steel. He wasn't bulky like All Might, but he was built like a martial artist. I can bench 100 kilograms. My grip strength is 3 times the average for my age. I've mastered the parkour routes through the city. Good. Because when you eat that hair, it's gonna hit like a freight train. I've been thinking about the entrance exam, Izuku said. The robot pointers. It's biased against non-combat quirks. Shinso, he failed because of it. You want to help him? I want to warn him. Tell him to apply for general studies but train for combat, so he's ready for the sports festival. Maybe spar with him. We have enough projects, Katsuki warned. Don't spread yourself too thin. He's a potential asset. Brainwashing is powerful against the League. Fine. We recruit the insomniac. But after the exam, the burden of the soul. That evening, Izuku sat in his room. He wasn't studying. He was staring at a photo on his desk. It was a picture of him and Bakugo from this timeline, taken by Inko. They were 12, standing in front of a hiking trail, giving thumbs up. They looked intense. Even in a photo, they didn't look like children having fun. They looked like a specialized task force on shore leave. Izuku felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. Sometimes, he missed the ignorance. He missed the days when he thought All Might was invincible. He missed not knowing that Shigaraki was Nana Shimura's grandson. He missed not knowing the sound of Kaken's heart stopping. The memories of the war were fading slightly in clarity, but the emotions were etched into his DNA. The fear. The desperation. He pulled out his phone. He had a secure messaging app that only connected to one other person. Deku Nightmare? The reply came instantly. Dynamite every night. You, Deku, yeah? I saw Gran Torino getting crushed. Dynamite, focus on the now. We are changing it. We are stronger. Deku, are we? I don't have OFA yet. I feel naked. Dynamite, you have me. And I remember everything. You aren't fighting alone this time, Izuku. Get some sleep. Izuku stared at the screen. You aren't fighting alone. That was the biggest change. In the last life, Izuku had isolated himself during the Dark Deku arc. He had tried to carry the world, leaving his friends behind because he thought it protected them. Katsuki wouldn't let him do that again. Izuku put the phone down and looked out the window. The moon was full. Okay, he whispered to the empty room. We wait. We train. And then we win. 6. The last day of normalcy, age 14. The final semester of middle school arrived. The air was thick with the scent of cherry blossoms and anxiety. The teacher stood at the podium, holding a stack of career aptitude forms. "You're all third years now," the teacher said, sounding bored. "It's time to think seriously about your future. I would pass out these forms, but—" He paused, then threw the papers into the air with a dramatic flourish. "I know you all want to be heroes." The class erupted into cheers, everyone activating their quirks. Fingers extended, eyes glowed, faint telekinesis rattled desks. Everyone except 2 students. Izuku Midoriya sat calmly, his hands folded on his desk. Katsuki Bakugo sat with his feet up, looking at the ceiling. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks," the teacher said. "But no power usage in school. Now let's see. Ah, Bakugo. You're aiming for UA High, correct?" The class gasped. "UA? The national school? That's impossible to get into." Katsuki didn't do his usual table jumping routine. He didn't scream about being the protagonist. He simply lowered his feet and looked at the teacher. "Yes," Katsuki said. "I am." "And?" The teacher hesitated, glancing at the green-haired boy. The class went silent. In the old timeline, this was where the laughter started. This was where Katsuki would have exploded Izuku's desk. "Midoriya is also applying for UA," the teacher announced. A pin drop could have been heard. Nobody laughed. They looked at Izuku. They looked at the boy who had aced every mock exam, the boy who could dismantle a person's psychological profile in 3 sentences, the boy who moved with the grace of a panther. "Makes sense," a student whispered. "Those 2 are monsters, even without a quirk. Midoriya is scary. They're definitely getting in." Katsuki turned his head slightly to look at Izuku. A small smirk played on his lips. Izuku met his gaze and nodded. The waiting was over. The prologue was finished. The stage was set. School ended. They packed their bags in silence. As they walked out of the gates of Aldera Junior High, the sun was high in the sky. "Where are we going?" Izuku asked, though he knew the answer. "Tatooine Shopping District," Katsuki said, adjusting his bag. "I'm craving a soda." "The underpass," Izuku corrected. "Yeah. The underpass." Katsuki cracked his knuckles. Sparks flew, brighter and hotter than they had been 10 years ago. "Hey, Deku." "Yeah, Kakin? Don't die." Izuku smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that mirrored the one on Bakugo's face. "I won't. I have a hair to eat." They walked side by side into the shadows of the underpass, walking toward the moment that would restart the engine of destiny. The Sludge villain was waiting. And this time, the prey he was about to catch were predators in disguise. The anticipation of the inevitable. The air in the tunnel was stagnant, smelling of old concrete, damp moss, and the faint, metallic tang of ozone that always seemed to linger around Katsuki. Izuku Midoriya walked with a measured stride, his yellow backpack secure on his shoulders. To any observer, he was just a middle school student walking home. But inside, his heart was beating a rhythm of calculated dread. 14:02 p.m. According to his memory, sharpened by the trauma of the previous timeline, the manhole cover 3 meters ahead would rattle in exactly 12 seconds. "You're tense," Katsuki said. He wasn't walking in front of Izuku today. He was walking beside him, his hands deep in his pockets, his posture deceptively relaxed. "The variable is the bottle," Izuku murmured, his voice barely bouncing off the curved walls. "In the original timeline, All Might dropped it because I grabbed his leg. If I don't grab his leg, the villain goes to prison. If the villain goes to prison, he doesn't attack you. If he doesn't attack you, All Might doesn't see my heroic spirit. If he doesn't see that, he doesn't give you the hair," Katsuki finished, kicking a loose pebble. It skittered across the concrete, echoing loudly. "So we have to engineer a disaster. Controlled chaos," Izuku corrected. "But I hate it. I hate gambling with civilians nearby. The shopping district was evacuated last time. No casualties except property damage and my ego," Katsuki grunted. "Just stick to the plan. I get grabbed. You save me. All Might watches. We win." It sounds simple when you say it. War is simple. It's people who complicate it. Clank. The sound was small, metallic, and terrifying final. Izuku stopped. Katsuki stopped. They looked at the manhole cover. It shifted. A line of viscous, dark green sludge oozed out, expanding rapidly like a pressurized foam. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A wet, gurgling voice hissed. The sludge villain rose, a towering mass of fluid and malice. Giant, bulging eyes rolled wildly before locking onto Izuku. "You'll do," the villain sneered, lunging forward. In the old life, Izuku had frozen. He had screamed. He had dropped his notebook. This time, Izuku Midori exhaled. Analysis, fluid body. No solid mass to strike. Vulnerability, eyes and teeth. Attack vector, suffocation via oral entry. As the tendril of sludge whipped toward him, Izuku didn't scream. He pivoted on his left heel, dropping his center of gravity. He swung his backpack not as a shield, but as a distraction, tossing it upward to draw the villain's eyeline. "Kaken, clear the zone!" Izuku ordered, his voice snapping with military precision. Katsuki didn't argue. He backpedaled, putting distance between himself and the splash zone, but his hands were already raised, palms sweating. "Don't die before the main event, Deku!" The villain was confused. The prey wasn't screaming. The prey was dodging. Izuku rolled under the first strike. He grabbed a handful of loose gravel from the tunnel edge and flung it. It wasn't a damaging attack, but the grit hit the villain's fluid surface, momentarily disrupting his surface tension. "You little rat!" The villain roared, expanding his mass to block the entire tunnel exit. "Stop squirming. It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. 45 seconds is a lifetime," Izuku stated calmly. He backed against the wall, eyes darting around. "All Might arrives in 3, 2. I am here." The grate burst open from above. A figure, impossibly large and radiating hope, crashed down onto the pavement. The wind pressure alone pushed the sludge back. Texas smash. The punch was not physical. It was a cannon of air pressure. The wind tunnel effect inside the underpass was devastating. The sludge villain didn't just scatter. He vaporized into droplets, splattering against the concrete walls with the sound of 1,000 wet rags hitting the floor. Izuku raised his arms to shield his face, planting his feet to withstand the gale force. Even without one for all, his legs were strong. He didn't tumble. Silence returned to the tunnel, broken only by the dripping of sludge. All Might stood tall, his signature grin blinding in the dim light. He began frantically scooping the villain into empty soda bottles. "Identify yourself, young man. You are unhurt?" All Might boomed. Izuku lowered his arms. He looked at the idol of his childhood. In the past, he would have been shaking, asking for an autograph. Now, he felt a profound sadness. He saw the hollow cheeks behind the shadow, the tremor in the hero's hand as he capped the bottle. "He's tired," Izuku thought. "He's been tired for so long." "I'm fine, All Might," Izuku said, bowing respectfully. "Thank you for the assist. Your arrival time was optimal." All Might blinked. "Optimal? Ah. Well. Good. I must be going. Justice never sleeps." He turned to launch himself. Izuku looked at Katsuki, who was leaning against the tunnel entrance, looking bored. Katsuki nodded imperceptibly. "Do it." Izuku ran. He didn't want to be a nuisance, but the timeline demanded it. He latched onto All Might's leg just as the hero leaped. "Hey! Hey! Hey!" All Might shouted, the wind whipping his face. "If I let go now, I'll die from fall damage." Izuku yelled back, his voice flat and factual. "Fair point." They landed on a rooftop. The impact was jarring. Izuku rolled to distribute the momentum, coming to a stop in a crouch. "That was reckless!" All Might scolded, though steam was already beginning to rise from his body. "I have no time." The bottle, Izuku pointed to All Might's cargo pocket. "It's gone." All Might froze. He patted his pocket. The realization hit him. The exhaustion hit him harder. Poof! The steam exploded. The muscular giant vanished, replaced by the skeletal figure of Tashinori Yagi. Izuku didn't gasp. He didn't scream imposter. He just stood up, brushing dust off his knees. "So," Izuku said, looking at the emaciated man, "the limit is down to 3 hours a day, isn't it? The injury from 5 years ago, The respiratory system is failing. All Might, Toshinori, stared at this middle schooler, blood trickling from his mouth. How do you know about that? The media doesn't. Basic deduction based on your active hours and the decline in solved cases per district, Izuku lied smoothly. Also, you're bleeding. Kid, Toshinori sighed, sitting heavily on the railing. You're sharp. Too sharp. But listen, the world needs a symbol. I have to keep smiling so they don't fear. A symbol is just a man, Izuku said quietly. And then break. A boom echoed in the distance. A pillar of smoke rose from the Tatooine shopping district. Toshinori's head snapped up. The bottle. I dropped it, that villain. He tried to buff up. He coughed a spray of blood. Damn it! Izuku walked to the edge of the roof. He looked at the smoke. He knew Katsuki was there. He knew the script. You can't go, Izuku said. Not like that. I have to. It's my fault. Then watch, Izuku said. He climbed over the railing. Just watch. Wait. Kid. You don't have a quirk. I can see it in your joints. The extra toe joint. Izuku paused. He looked back at All Might. I don't need a quirk to save him. I just need to move. He began to descend the fire escape, moving with a speed that left the number one hero staring in stunned silence. 2. The Crucible of Fire. The Tatooine shopping district was an inferno. The Sludge villain had realized his mistake with the first boy, the one who dodged, and had found a better prize. This new host was volatile. His explosions were delicious. Every time the boy struggled, the explosions fed the fires, creating a barrier that kept the pro-heroes at bay. Don't come near me! The villain shrieked, his liquid body bubbling from the heat. I'll snap his neck. Inside the sludge, Katsuki Bakugo was suffocating. It was a familiar sensation. The slime in his nose, the pressure on his throat. In the last life, this was the moment his pride broke. He had thrashed in panic, firing blindly. This time, he was calm. His eyes were open, burning from the smoke but focused. He held his breath. He knew panicking increased oxygen consumption. He needed to buy time. Death Arms is useless, Katsuki analyzed, glancing through the translucent slime. Kamui Woods can't get close to the fire. Empty Lady doesn't have the lane width. Pathetic. He felt the villain trying to force entry into his mouth. Katsuki clenched his jaw. He maneuvered his hands, palms facing outward. If I blast now, I ignite the gas main under the street. The radius is too small. I need a vent. He waited. He knew he was coming. The crowd was screaming. The heroes were shouting for everyone to stay back. It's my fault. All Might, in his skinny form, clutched a lamppost at the back of the crowd, his face twisted in agony. I'm pathetic. Then, the yellow police tape snapped. It wasn't a frantic, flailing run. It was a sprint. Low to the ground. Aerodynamic. Stop. You'll get yourself killed. Death Arms roared. Izuku ignored him. The world narrowed down to a tunnel. At the end of the tunnel was Katsuki. He ran through the fire. The heat was intense, singeing the hair on his arms, but it was nothing compared to the flames of Dabi or the heat of Endeavor's rage. This was manageable. You again! The sludge villain roared, recognizing the green hair. I'll kill you! He lashed out with a tendril of sludge. Izuku didn't stop. He slid. It was a baseball slide, perfectly timed. He went under the tendril, the concrete scraping his leg through his trousers. He popped up 3 meters from the villain. He didn't have a smile on his face. He had the grimace of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. Kaken! Izuku yelled. Sector 4. Eyes. It was a code. Sector 4 meant the upper right quadrant. Eyes meant the target. Izuku ripped the backpack off his shoulder. It was filled with textbooks, heavy, dense mass. He spun, using the centrifugal force to launch the bag. It didn't hit the sludge randomly. It struck the villain's bulging left eye with the force of a brick. AGHH. The villain recoiled, the fluid structure destabilizing as he flinched. The grip on Katsuki's mouth loosened for a fraction of a second. That was all Katsuki needed. Now! Katsuki roared. He didn't fire a massive explosion. He fired a stun grenade, a concentrated flash bang of light and focused sound, directed inward to push the sludge away from his face without igniting the surrounding fires. Boom! The sludge was blown back, creating a cavity. Katsuki gasped, sucking in greedy lungfuls of air. Izuku was already there. He didn't offer a hand to pull, he offered a shoulder. Fluid dynamics, Izuku grunted, plunging his hands into the sludge to grab Katsuki's collar. If we disrupt the surface tension, he loses cohesion. I know that, nerd! Katsuki yelled. Left side. He's regrouping. The villain, recovering from the eye shot, was reforming. I'll kill you both. A massive wave of sludge rose like a tsunami, ready to crush them. The heroes were paralyzed. They saw two middle schoolers standing in the fire. They expected them to die, but the boys didn't cower. Katsuki stepped in front of Izuku. Izuku placed a hand on Katsuki's back to brace him. AP shot. Katsuki whispered, curling his fingers into a circle. It was a move he shouldn't know. A move that required fine control he shouldn't have at 14. Autocannon! Bam 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 bam! A rapid-fire barrage of concentrated blasts tore through the oncoming wave of sludge. It didn't destroy the villain, but it drilled holes through the attack, breaking its momentum. The sludge collapsed around them, splashing harmlessly. The crowd went silent. Izuku stepped out from behind Katsuki. He picked up a piece of burning debris, a metal pipe. He's fluid! Izuku shouted to the heroes, his voice cracking with authority. He has no skeletal structure. Contain him. Don't strike him. The sludge villain, riddled with holes and disoriented by the concussive blasts, tried to reform again. I am invincible. You're a puddle, Katsuki spat. Suddenly, the air pressure dropped. Izuku and Katsuki looked up. They felt it before they saw it. The ultimate power. All Might had seen enough. He had seen a quirkless boy charge into hell. He had seen a victim fight back with the precision of a soldier. He had seen two children doing what the pros were too afraid to do. He forced the power through his broken body. He pushed past the limit. I really am pathetic. All Might roared, blood spraying from his mouth as he leaped over the crowd. Do not fear, children. For I am here. He landed between the boys and the villain. He didn't wind up. He simply blocked the villain's next strike with his forearm. Detroit. Izuku grabbed Katsuki and tackled him to the ground, shielding Katsuki's head with his own. Brace. Smash. The world turned white. The updraft was violent. The fire was extinguished instantly, starved of oxygen. The clouds above spiraled and broke. The sludge villain was atomized, scattered across the city in harmless droplets. And then rain, a gentle, summer shower began to fall on the scorched street. All Might stood in the center of the crater, steam rising from his body. He raised a fist. The crowd erupted. Izuku lay on the wet pavement, breathing hard. He looked at Katsuki. Katsuki's face was covered in soot, but his eyes were alive. A bit dramatic, Katsuki whispered. We needed the rain, Izuku whispered back. Cleans the slate. 3. The critique of the pros. The scolding was inevitable, but it felt different this time. You moron! Death Arms was yelling at Izuku, his finger jabbing into Izuku's chest. You have no quirk. You could have gotten yourself killed. You interfered with official hero work. Izuku stood at attention. He didn't look down. He looked Death Arms in the eye. With all due respect, sir, Izuku said calmly. The hostage was suffocating. The villain's entry vector was the mouth. You were waiting for a specialized quirk while the victim had less than 60 seconds of oxygen remaining. I made a calculated decision to disrupt the villain's focus to buy time. Death Arms blinked. Aye, well you. And Izuku continued, I noticed you were standing near the gas main valve. Why didn't you shut it off to allow Kamui Woods to engage? Death Arms opened his mouth, then closed it. His face turned a shade of red that matched his costume. Kid's got a point, Kamui Woods muttered, looking away. Meanwhile, the press was swarming Katsuki. That quirk! It was amazing! You held out so long. You're a natural hero. Katsuki batted a microphone away. He looked at the reporters with disdain. I didn't do anything, Katsuki said coldly. I got caught. I was careless. If he pointed a thumb at Izuku, hadn't stepped in, I'd be dead. Write that down. The reporters looked confused. But he's quirkless. He's got more guts than the rest of you vultures combined, Katsuki growled. He stood up. Come on, Deku. We're leaving. Izuku bowed once more to the stunned heroes. Thank you for your hard work. As they walked away, the heroes were left in an uncomfortable silence. They didn't feel like they had saved the day. They felt like they had just been evaluated by their superiors for the offer. The sun was setting, painting the wet streets in hues of orange and purple. They walked in silence for a few blocks. You okay? Izuku asked. Throat hurts, Katsuki rasped. Need water. But good work. The backpack throw was solid, thanks. Your stun grenade was perfect. Minimal collateral, I know. They turned the corner onto the street that led to their homes. I am here. All Might slid out from a side street, striking a pose. All Might? Izuku feigned surprise, though he had been counting the footsteps following them for the last 3 blocks. I escaped the reporters. All Might laughed, then immediately coughed up blood and deflated into Toshinori. Poof, you really should see a doctor about that, Katsuki said dryly. Toshinori wiped his mouth. He looked at the 2 boys. He looked at Katsuki, then he looked intensely at Izuku. Young man, Toshinori said, his voice trembling slightly. I came to thank you. And to apologize. Earlier, I told you that without a quirk, you couldn't be a hero. Izuku stood still. He clutched the strap of his backpack. This was it. The words that had saved his life in the past. I was wrong, Toshinori said. Back there, in that fire, you were the only one who moved. You, with no power, no training, you ran in. Toshinori clutched his chest, over his heart. Top heroes have stories about their school days. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku felt the tears welling up. Even knowing it was coming, even having lived through a war, hearing these words from him, it still broke him. That was true for you, wasn't it? Izuku nodded, tears spilling onto his cheeks. Yes. You can be a hero, Toshinori said softly. The silence stretched. It was a holy moment. Then, Toshinori straightened up. I have a secret to tell you. A secret about my quirk. One for all, Izuku said. Toshinori froze. His eyes bulged. What? Izuku wiped his eyes. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the steely resolve of the successor. A power cultivation quirk, Izuku recited. Passed down from generation to generation. You are the 8th holder. It stockpiles power and transfers it to a successor. Toshinori looked like he had been slapped. He looked at Katsuki. How do you kids know this? Is this an enemy quirk? A surveillance quirk? Katsuki stepped forward. Relax, All Might. We aren't enemies. We're on your side. Then how? Toshinori demanded, his skeletal frame tense. Izuku took a deep breath. He couldn't tell the truth, not the whole truth. Not yet. We analyze, Izuku said. We watch. We listen. And we figured it out. But that doesn't matter right now. Izuku walked up to All Might. He looked up at the towering, fragile man. I accept, Izuku said. All Might blinked. You accept? Your power. You're looking for a successor, aren't you? That's why you're in Yuzurifu. You're looking at UA students. Well yes, but I want it, Izuku said, his voice hard. But not just to be a hero. We know what's coming, All Might. We know about the League. We know about the Nomus. We know about him. The reference to All for One made Toshinori flinch. We need to talk, Izuku said, his eyes burning with a green fire that seemed to hold the ghosts of 7 other users. We need to talk about One for All. About the transfer, and about how we're going to use it to save the world. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the fire. He saw the madness. But he also saw the hope. Who are you two? All Might whispered. Izuku and Katsuki exchanged a look. We're the future, Katsuki said. And we have a lot of work to do, Izuku added. Starting with your training schedule. 10 months isn't enough time if we do it the standard way. All Might stared at them. Then, slowly, a small, genuine smile crept onto his face. It wasn't the smile of the symbol of peace. It was the smile of a teacher finding his students. Okay, Toshinori said. Let's talk. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them stood in the twilight. The timeline had not just rippled, it had shattered. The Sludge villain incident was over. The war for the future had just begun. The Cathedral of Garbage. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of consumerism. It was a sprawling, suffocating monument to apathy, where the ocean vomited up the city's neglect in the form of rusting washing machines, rotting tires, and plastic skeletons of forgotten toys. The smell was a physical wall, a mix of brine, rust, and decay. To most, it was an eyesore. To Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo, it was a cathedral. This was where it had started. This was where the boy who cried became the vessel of the world's greatest power. It's dirtier than I remember, Katsuki noted, wrinkling his nose. He was leaning against the railing of the promenade, looking down at the mountains of refuse. Did people produce more trash in this timeline, or did we just forget how bad it was? We forgot, Izuku said softly. He was gripping the railing, his knuckles white. Memory edits out the smell. It keeps the golden hour lighting. They were wearing their school uniforms, the black fabric absorbing the early morning heat. It was Saturday. 0600 hours. He's late, Katsuki checked his watch. Top hero, terrible time management. He's not late. He's hesitating, Izuku corrected. He's standing 3 blocks away on top of the convenience store, watching us. He's checking for tails. He thinks we might be spies for All for One, Katsuki snorted. Paranoid old man. Good. He should be. He's coming now. He just realized we aren't wearing earpieces. A moment later, a gust of wind kicked up a swirl of sand and candy wrappers. A skeletal figure in a baggy yellow suit coughed his way into existence at the bottom of the stairs. Toshinori Yagi looked worse than Izuku remembered. The shadows under his eyes were cavernous. The blood on his chin was fresh. He looked like a man holding onto a cliff edge by his fingernails. Young Midoriya. Young Bakugo, Toshinori greeted them, his voice raspy. He didn't smile. His blue eyes, usually hidden in shadow, were sharp, searching for deceit. You chose a secluded spot. It's fitting, Izuku said, walking down the stairs, Katsuki flanking him. Nobody comes here. It's the perfect place to clean up. Toshinori stood his ground. Before we discuss cleaning, or training, or anything else. I need the truth. Who sent you? The question hung in the salty air. Nobody sent us, Katsuki said, hands in his pockets. We told you. We analyzed. Analysis doesn't explain knowing the name of my quirk, Toshinori countered, his voice dropping an octave. It doesn't explain knowing about the transfer method. That information isn't in any database. It's in my head and the heads of a very select few. Unless you have a quirk that reads minds, or unless you are working for the man who gave me this wound. He lifted his shirt, revealing the horrific, spiderweb scar that ate half his torso. Izuku didn't flinch. He had seen worse. He had seen this man die. We aren't working for All for One, Izuku said, naming the devil. Toshinori flinched. We hate him more than you do. If we were working for him, you'd already be dead, All Might. He wouldn't negotiate. He'd take. Then how? Toshinori pleaded. Give me a reason to trust you. Izuku looked at Katsuki. They had rehearsed this. The time travel truth was a one-way ticket to a psych ward or a government lab. They needed a lie that was close enough to the truth to pass a lie detector, but grounded enough to be believed. My quirk, Izuku lied, touching his temple. Or rather, my lack of one, forced my brain to compensate. I have episodes. Visions. Hyperdeductive intuition. I see patterns. I saw you, and I saw the lights inside you. 7 lights. And a void. It wasn't technically a lie. He did see the vestiges. And me? Katsuki stepped in. I'm the only one who believed him. We started digging. We found the gaps in the records. The sudden disappearances of past heroes. The lineage. It wasn't hard to connect the dots if you know where to look. Toshinori stared at them. He looked at Izuku, the boy who had run into the fire. He looked at the determination in those green eyes. It was the same look Nana Shimura used to have, a look that said, "I will carry this weight." Hyperdeductive intuition. Tashinori muttered. I've heard of mental quirks manifesting in strange ways. But to deduce one for all, he sighed, a long, rattling sound that seemed to deflate his entire frame. The tension bled out of his shoulders. You really aren't villains, are you? We're the guys who are going to save your life, Katsuki said bluntly. Now, are you going to give him the hair, or are we going to stand here smelling garbage all day? Tashinori laughed. It was a dry, wheezing sound, but it was genuine. You boys, you're terrifying. Okay. I believe you. My gut tells me you're allies. And my gut is rarely wrong. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. Usually, I would prescribe the aim to pass, American Dream Plan. A training regimen to build your body from scratch. One for all requires a strong vessel. If you take it now, your limbs will explode. Izuku took the papers. He scanned them. Standard hypertrophy training. Diet plans. Heavy lifting. It's a good plan for a beginner. He handed the papers back. I don't need it. Tashinori blinked. Excuse me? Young man, you are, forgive me, scrawny. You have spirit, but your body is. Izuku didn't speak. He simply unbuttoned his school jacket. He took off his shirt. Tashinori's eyes widened. Izuku wasn't bulky. He didn't look like a bodybuilder. But he looked like a whipcord. His muscles were dense, compact, and defined. His serratus anterior cut deep lines along his ribs. His arms were ropey with functional muscle. It was the body of a martial artist, a gymnast, a soldier. Scar tissue, faint, but present from his training over the last 10 years, marked his knuckles. I've been preparing for this since I was 4 years old, Izuku said quietly. Every day. Calisthenics. Parkour. Isometric holds. My bone density is 3 times the average for my age due to repeated impact training. My core stability is perfect, Katsuki scoffed. Show him, nerd. Don't just narrate it. Izuku turned to a large, rusted refrigerator half buried in the sand. In the original timeline, this was the crowning achievement of 10 months of work. Izuku walked up to it. He didn't try to lift it with brute force. He crouched, finding the center of gravity. He wedged his shoulder under the frame. He breathed in, diaphragmatic breathing, and drove upward with his legs. The fridge rose. Izuku grunted, his veins bulging slightly, but his form remained perfect. He walked, strained, but steady, 10 feet to the edge of the pile and set it down. He turned back to All Might, not even out of breath. My vessel is ready, Izuku stated. I can hold it. Maybe not 100% yet. But I can hold the torch. Tashinori stood in stunned silence. He looked at the fridge. He looked at the boy. My God, Tashinori whispered. You didn't come to me to be trained. You came to me to be armed. To the spar. However, Tashinori said, recovering his composure. He transformed. Poof. All Might stood on the beach, flexing. The sheer presence of him blew away the nearby seagulls. Strength is not just lifting weights. It is combat. It is instinct. Before I hand over this power, I must know if you can fight. I cannot give a nuclear weapon to a child who panics when punched. A spar? Katsuki grinned. He dropped his bag. He began stretching his shoulders. I've been waiting for this. 2-on-1? Yes. All Might boomed. Come at me with the intent to kill. I will not hold back. Well, I will hold back significantly, but pretend I won't. Izuku took a stance. It wasn't the amateurish guard of his middle school days. It was a mixed martial arts stance, low and fluid, hands open to grapple or strike. Katsuki took the flank. His hands were already smoking. Ready? All Might grinned. Go, Izuku whispered. They moved. It wasn't the clumsy charge of children. It was a coordinated assault. Katsuki launched himself into the air with a blast, blinding All Might with a smoke screen. Stun grenade! All Might swatted the smoke away. Good distraction. But, he reached out to grab Katsuki. Izuku was already inside his guard. Using the smoke as cover, Izuku had slid between All Might's legs. He grabbed the hero's ankle and pulled. It was like trying to trip a mountain. All Might didn't budge. But he did look down. Low center of gravity. All Might praised. Kaken! Hi right! Izuku yelled. Katsuki came out of the smoke, spinning. He delivered a blast directly to All Might's shoulder. It did 0 damage, but the force was enough to make All Might take a half step back to maintain balance. In that split second of unbalance, Izuku didn't retreat. He scrambled up All Might's back like a spider, locking his legs around the hero's neck in a sleeper hold. What? All Might gasped. Blast the legs, Izuku commanded. Katsuki dropped to the ground and unleashed a rapid-fire volley of explosions at All Might's knees. All Might, dealing with the extra weight on his neck and the heat on his knees, actually stumbled. He fell to one knee. Silence. Izuku released the hold and backflipped off, landing next to Katsuki. All Might stayed on one knee for a moment. He looked at the sand. He looked at his knee. He had been forced to kneel. By 2 quirkless, effectively, middle schoolers. He began to laugh. A deep, booming belly laugh that shook the trash piles. Ha ha! Amazing! Truly amazing! He stood up, wiping sand off his trousers. Coordination. Fearlessness. Tactical improvisation. You two fight like veterans. You fight like you've been partners for a decade. We have our moments, Katsuki muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. All Might looked at Izuku. The playfulness vanished from his face. Young Midoriya. You hesitated when you had my neck. Sir, you could have gouged my eyes. You could have choked harder. But you loosened your grip to ensure I didn't fall on a piece of sharp metal. All Might pointed to a jagged rusty pipe sticking out of the sand where he had knelt. You protected your enemy even while attacking him. Izuku looked down. Old habits. That, All Might said, his voice thick with emotion. That is the heart of a hero. You have the body. You have the mind. And most importantly, you have the madness to save everyone. He deflated back into Tashinori. I have no more objections. You are worthy. 3. The sacrament. The sun was fully up now. The ocean glittered like diamonds. Tashinori reached up and plucked a single golden hair from his head. This is usually the part where I make a joke, Tashinori said, holding the hair up to the light. Something about eat this. But somehow, it feels inappropriate today. He looked at the hair. This was the legacy. The culmination of 8 lives. The stockpiled power of suffering, hope, and determination. This power, Tashinori said softly. It is a torch passed through the dark. Many have died holding it. It is a burden. It brings enemies. It brings pain. Are you absolutely sure, Izuku Midoriya? Izuku stepped forward. He remembered the first user, Yoichi. He remembered the second and third, who had initially rejected him. He remembered Hikage, Banjo, and Nana. He remembered the feeling of their consciousness fading as he gave it up to save Shigaraki. He missed them. They were his family. I'm not taking it to be cool, Izuku said, his voice steady. And I'm not taking it just to be All Might. I'm taking it to finish what the first started. I'm taking it to break the cycle. He extended his hand. Tashinori placed the hair in Izuku's palm. Katsuki watched from a few feet away. He felt a lump in his throat. In the last timeline, he had resented this moment. He had hated that Deku got a handout. He had felt cheated. Now, he felt only a solemn reverence. He knew what that hair cost. He knew it cost Izuku his arms, his childhood, and eventually his life. Don't screw it up this time, nerd, Katsuki thought. And I won't screw up watching your back. I'm sorry, All Might, Katsuki thought, looking at the skeletal man. I'm sorry I was the reason you retired. I'm sorry I was weak. This time, you keep your spark. We'll carry the fire. Izuku looked at the hair. It digests better with water, Izuku said practically. Just eat it. Katsuki barked, breaking the tension. Izuku swallowed the hair. He waited. It takes about 3 hours to digest and integrate into the DNA, Izuku said, checking his watch. We should probably start cleaning the beach while we wait. Tashinori blinked. You know the digestion time too? Estimated, Izuku shrugged. He walked over to a pile of tires. Come on, Kaken. We have a beach to clear. 4. The Awakening. 3 hours later, the sun was high. They had cleared a massive section of the beach. Tashinori was sitting on a clean patch of sand, watching them work with a look of pure bewilderment. He had expected to spend months coaching them. Instead, he was basically a supervisor on a construction site run by 2 terrifyingly efficient teenagers. Izuku stopped. He dropped the tire he was holding. A ripple went through his body. It started in his stomach, a hot, searing knot of energy. It wasn't painful, not like the first time. The first time, it had felt like swallowing lava. This time, it felt like a key turning in a lock. The energy surged outward. It found the pathways Izuku had spent the last 10 years carving out, and the mental pathways he had spent a lifetime refining. The red veins appeared on his skin. Midoriya? Tashinori stood up. Is it happening? Izuku closed his eyes. Hello? He projected his thought inward. First? Banjo? Nana? Silence. The vestiges were dormant. The quirk was too young in this timeline, the core too stable. They hadn't woken up yet. They were sleeping ghosts. That's okay, Izuku thought. Sleep. I'll drive for a while. He opened his eyes. Green lightning crackled around his body. It wasn't the chaotic, self-destructive lightning of his first attempt at the entrance exam. It was controlled. It hummed. Full cowling, Izuku whispered. He dialed it in. 100% would kill him. 50% would break bones. 5%. The lightning settled close to his skin. Tashinori's jaw hit the floor. He's regulating the output? Instantly? Without breaking a limb? Katsuki smirked. Told you. He's a nerd. Izuku looked at his hands. The power was there. The stockpiled strength. It sang to him. He looked at the ocean. I need to vent, Izuku said. Do it, Katsuki encouraged. Izuku turned to the water. He pulled his arm back. He didn't just throw a punch, he engaged his hips, his core, his shoulder. He channeled the 5% perfectly to the point of impact, then flickered to 10% for a microsecond at the apex. A technique he had mastered in the war. Smash! The air pressure cannon fired. It struck the water. A massive trench was carved into the ocean surface, spraying mist and water high into the air. The shockwave knocked over a stack of trash 50 meters away. Izuku stood there, arm extended. It throbbed, a dull ache, but the bone was intact. He turned to All Might. He was crying. Giant, fat tears rolled down his freckled cheeks. I missed it, Izuku sobbed, clutching his chest. I missed it so much. Tashinori rushed forward, panicking. Young Midoriya. Does it hurt? Is it too much? No, Izuku choked out, smiling through the tears. It feels like coming home. The new syllabus. Later, they sat on the seawall, drinking sports drinks Tashinori had bought from a vending machine. I must admit, Tashinori said, staring at the soda can in his large hand. I am at a loss. I prepared a curriculum. I prepared speeches. I prepared medical kits. Keep the medical kits, Katsuki advised. He's still reckless. I am not. You are. But All Might, we don't need the basics. We need the advanced stuff. Tashinori looked at them. Advanced? Combat application, Izuku said, his notebook already out. I can hold 5% safely. Maybe 8% if I push it. I need to get that to 20% before the entrance exam in 10 months. We need to work on mobility, aerial combat, and quirk singularity theory. Quirk singularity. Tashinori rubbed his temples. You boys give me a headache. But very well. He stood up, transforming into All Might one last time for the day. He struck a pose against the setting sun. If you are running, I must sprint to keep up. We have 10 months. We will clear this entire beach. We will hone your bodies. And we will prepare for Yue High. Yes, sir! Izuku shouted, standing up and saluting. Whatever, Katsuki grunted, but he stood up too. All Might looked at the beach. It was already 10% cleared in one day. By the way, All Might asked. What is the name of that movie used? The Lightning Spread? Full cowling, Izuku said. Catchy. Did you just come up with it? Something like that. 6. The Shadow of the Future. As they walked home that evening, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. You have it back, Katsuki said. Yeah. Izuku clenched his fist. The hum was there. A constant companion. Does it feel different? Quieter, Izuku admitted. Without the voices of the past users, it's lonely. But it's also mine. For now, we stick to the plan, Katsuki reminded him. Entrance exam. Aizawa. USJ. We save Aizawa's eye, Izuku said. We save 13. We save everyone. They stopped at the intersection. Hey, Deku. Yeah? You didn't break anything today, Izuku smiled. I told you. I'm not that kid anymore. Good, Katsuki bumped his fist against Izuku's shoulder. A gentle hit, but firm. Because we have a lot of ass-kicking to do, Izuku watched Katsuki walk away. He touched the spot on his shoulder. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, All for One was plotting. Somewhere, Shigaraki was scratching his neck. Somewhere, the doctor was building monsters. But for the first time since waking up in the sandbox, Izuku didn't feel terrified. He clenched his fist, green sparks dancing between his fingers. I am here, he thought. And this time, I'm not leaving until the job is done.